morning, everyone. Before I talk to you about accessibility and AI, I want to ask you all to keep two things firmly in your minds over the next 30 minutes or so. One is copyright, the other consumption. Whatever you think of the current generation of AI tooling, the truth is they've all been trained on our data. They've used our information indiscriminately, without permission, without respect for copyright law, and certainly with no respect for our individual privacies. And it has to change. Something else that has to change is their excessive consumption of electricity and water. As individuals, our choices, our options are limited. Some tools will let you opt out of having your information used as training fodder, but arguably it's a day late and $1 short in any case. We can choose not to use these tools, but that's really hard. There are actually some good reasons for using these tools, as we'll see soon. Worse than that, these things are making their way seemingly into every application, every platform, every website, apart from those on the indie web, that we use to live our lives, to get stuff done, to get the job done. So what I think we can do, what I think we must do, is insist that our governments deal with these problems. Because really, it's only at the level of policy, law, and regulation that we've got any hope of bringing the companies that are behind these tools, these useful tools, to heal and to do something useful. And on that sombering note,
AI and accessibility. The good,
the bad, and the bollocks.
It's an amazing word, isn't it? No, not accessibility, bollocks. Come on with you. It's one of the best words in the English language, in my opinion. But I do want to clear up the way in which I mean it in this talk. I'm not going to be using it to refer to a person's testicles. I'm not going to be using it in the sense of something that's just extraordinarily good, as in, it's the dog's bollocks, isn't it? I'm not going to be using it as an expression of outrage or desolation, as in, oh, utterly bloody bollocking hell. But I am going to be using it in that most marvelously British way of something that's just a bit rubbish. You know, it's just a bit bollocks, really, isn't it? So now we got that cleared up. Something else I would like to clear up is the kind of AI I'm going to be talking about, or actually not talking about. I'm not going to be talking about general artificial intelligence. This is still, for the moment, the domain of the movies, so we're a long way from this.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
So, park HAL 9000, Cyberdyne Systems, and Skynet in Hollywood, and let's focus on some of the AI that's actually out there in the world already. The first is a kind you might not have heard of before. It's discriminative AI, as opposed to generative. Discriminative AI is trained on large amounts of data, but the data's already been classified, categorized, or labeled in some ways. So when a discriminative AI is fed some new data, what it does is calculate the statistical probability that that bit of data matches something it's already aware of. In other words, is this picture of a cat or not? And it's been used in accessibility for quite a long time. Speech recognition is one of the earliest forms. The ability for AI to listen to somebody speak, to interpret that and convert it into text.
This is Dragon Naturally Speaking, speech recognition software that turns your voice into text 3 times faster than typing, with up to 99% accuracy, period.
Now, people with disabilities that mean they find it difficult or impossible to use conventional input modes, keyboard, mice, etc., touch screens, have been using speech recognition for a very long time. Most of us actually use it in some way, shape or form now, whether it's through Siri or Alexa or any of the other interfaces that we've got on most devices that talk to each other. And that's 2 common themes in accessibility. Text is really central to a lot of accessibility, and where it's useful to someone with a disability, it also turns out it's pretty damn useful to the rest of us too, which is good things to bear in mind. Object recognition is another way that discriminative AI has been helpful. If you're someone like me who can't see, then sometimes telling what something is a bit of a challenge. Great example is American paper money. In the UK, across Europe, different denominations of paper money are different sizes. It's really nice and simple. Not so much in America, bless them. Every single dollar bill over there, be it a 1, 5, 20, exactly the same size. But there's an app on my phone called Seeing AI. It's free, courtesy of Microsoft, and I can point the camera and it will use object recognition to tell me that something's a $1 bill or euros or red as opposed to blue, or that there's a light source in the corner of the room that my phone's pointing out. It's really, really good at telling me what stuff is, which is, quite frankly, pretty useful. Face recognition, probably another thing that you are all very much aware of. It came into mainstream kind of recognition, I suppose, with the iPhone 10 back in 2017. And again, something that made security on our phones particularly more convenient for most of us, actually enabled security for people who, again, find it difficult or impossible to interact with a touchscreen device. Or people like myself, if you use a screen reader on a touchscreen device, I'm lousy at it. I hate it because I'm slow. On my laptop, I can type really fast and I love it. Touchscreen, not so much. So passcode entering is just cumbersome. Face recognition just, helps me maintain that security much more easily and much more accessibly. And then there's character recognition, another one that's been around for a very long time. We've got a lot of scanned images, many of which contain text out there on the web, but there's also a lot of stuff that's just in print out there in the real world. And with character recognition AI, we can point an app or a camera at it, have it take a picture of the text or receive a picture of text and translate it into actual plain text, which something like a screen reader can read. So, for example, I can point my phone now at something in a store and have it read the price or the ingredients or medicine labels, how often I should take something. The other example on screen is somebody who's scanned in their passport and it's taken all the text information that can be later copied and pasted or reused in a form, which is not only helpful for somebody who can't see the text on the passport, but somebody who has a disability that means, again, typing or cutting and pasting is complicated, just takes a lot of the pain and aggravation out of that process for them. And then we have pattern recognition in the very general sense. And on screen, there's a picture of the famous Monty Python Spam with Everything sketch, because that's where we gave all the rubbish email that we receive its name. You might think this is a strange thing to mention in terms of accessibility, but pretty much every email provider out there is using AI now and has done for some time to get rid of spam before it hits our inboxes, which again, it's useful for all of us. But if you're someone who has a cognitive disability, that means processing large amounts, especially large amounts of inconsequential information, is tedious or time-consuming or really difficult. Or you're someone who has anxiety, to Remy's point, the last thing any of us needs right now is just reading through tons and tons of rubbish in our spam. So this is indirectly, a benefit for accessibility just in terms of well-being to various degrees. And then we come on to our favorite, generative AI, the thing that's, of course, been driving a lot of the commentary, a lot of the press, a lot of the excitement, and a lot of the concern recently. If you didn't already know, generative AI is trained on, well, pretty much everything. They let them loose on the web and they hoovered up pretty much everything that we digitized over the past 30 years. So all of humanity's histories, writings, paintings, pictures, videos, everything you can think of. It's just sucked it all up. And then what it does is spit it all out again in various forms of text, audio, images, video, and the like, often with less desirable effects than we might imagine. But even here too, there are some good things going on for accessibility. On screen, there's a picture of the building that we're in now. My screen reader has the option to ask two different AI tools Claude and ChatGPT to describe images right from within my screen reader. When I asked one of them to describe this image, this is what I got back.
The image shows a pair of large, black and white striped legs sticking up from the roof of a building. The legs appear as though they belong to a mannequin or a sculpture and are positioned upside down, with feet pointed upwards against a bright blue sky. The building is light-colored and features some architectural details like ledges. The whimsical sculpture adds a playful and unexpected element to the structure's appearance.
It's hard to describe just how extraordinary that is as a blind person. Sure, I've always had people who I could ask to describe images, but the truth is when you ask the average human to describe an image like this one, they'll probably say something like, well, it's a building with some legs on the roof. Okay, I'm sure you can keep interrogating your human, but that's a bit of a burden. And people are lovely, and then they're willing to help, but there's only so far. I certainly want to push that. So this is remarkable, and I know people who are blind who are going back through decades worth of family albums, photo albums, because the picture they knew as Auntie Jean and Uncle Bob at Christmas dinner. They can now work out what Auntie Jean was wearing and, whether Uncle Bob was carving the turkey or something. The level of detail that you can get at now, independently on your own, is really quite something. And then we have video. Video on, TV, movies, often, but not always, comes with audio description, a second narrative track that tells me what's going on visually on screen. But it's not universal. You can't guarantee it's going to go there. So what if we could use AI to do that? This feature landed in Seeing AI, the app with the dollar bill, just a week ago. And you can upload a video, have it processed, and it will make a reasonable job of audio description. Here's the Apple video from earlier.
Clay, button. A vibrant, abstract image with swirling blue and purple colors. A simple white background with a purple X in the center. Close-up of a smartphone's top edge, showing a blue abstract pattern on the screen. A smartphone screen displaying a swirling blue and white pattern. The word password appears in a colorful gradient on a white background. A person with a blurred face is shown. The words your face appear in a colorful gradient on a white background. Another person with a blurred face is shown. The words face ID appear in a colorful gradient on a white background. Close-up of a smartphone's front camera and speaker area. The word unlock appears in a colorful gradient on a white background. A person with a blurred face is shown. The word any appears in a colorful gradient on a white background. A person holding an object in front of their face, which is blurred. The words Apple Pay with appear in a colorful gradient on a white background. The words it's appear in a colorful gradient on a white background. A smartphone displaying a vibrant, abstract pattern on its screen. The words iPhone Plus appear in a colorful gradient on a white background. The words iPhone Plus appear next to a person with long hair. A colorful Apple logo is displayed on a white background.
Stop.
A plain white background is shown.
Now, don't get me wrong, that's a really weird experience to listen to. It's really choppy. You couldn't listen to a movie or a TV show or something like that for sure. But this is new. And what really makes that remarkable is that because it's my screen reader on my phone that's actually reading the text that gets shown up, this works no matter how fast or slow you have your screen reader set to. And that's always one of the challenges with automatically generated audio description is the speed that you want that secondary narration to be at. So whereas this is amazing, I've been using that video in talks since about 2018, I think, and until I heard that a week or so ago, I had no idea of all the details that were in it. But what it promises for the future is, even more remarkable, I think. But that had to be pre-processed. I had to upload that video to my phone. It took about 5 minutes for the AI to do its thing. What if we could do something in real time? This too is a feature that's just landed with the recent beta of iOS 18, so past couple of weeks. I can now set my camera rolling on my iPhone, enable real-time description, and whatever my camera is looking at, I'll get a description as it's happening. So here's a quick example.
A toy car on a wooden surface. A star-shaped ornament on a wooden surface. A glass bottle on a wooden surface in front of a white wall. A globe on an orange surface in front of a white wall.
So that's just panning the camera around a chest of drawers in my home office with some of the knickknacks that I've got about the place, and it's pretty good. But imagine that when you're just walking around looking for signs, street signs in a hotel, looking for your hotel room number, stuff like that. Again, this is really a huge step forward in terms of kind of independent navigation and existence in the world for someone, especially like me, who can't see. But obviously that all involves you waving your phone around, which is not terribly secure and certainly not a bright idea out on the streets anymore. So what about wearable stuff? Well, this is where Meta, which it pains me to acknowledge, are actually doing something interesting. They've teamed up with Ray-Bans, so you can get some wearable stuff that has the Meta AI on it. But they're teaming up with the people who make some of the apps I've just mentioned, Seeing AI, for example, and a couple of others like it. So that before very long, I won't need to wave my phone around to get that real-time description. I'll be able to just walk around somewhere wearing some Ray-Bans, hopefully looking a bit stylish while I'm at it, and get, some really good information as it's happening. Try and imagine the next time you're walking down the street, perhaps when you're heading out for lunch from here, and you're glancing around, just think how much information you take in, the buildings around you, if there are trees on the road, if there's traffic going by, what kind of cars they are, all of that kind of stuff. I don't get to do that anymore. And this really opens up the possibility of just taking in a bit more of the world around me, which is hugely exciting. Let's shift it now. Let's think again about text generation, because again, as I say, text is really at the core of a lot of this. What if we could team it up with AI speech generation? So I'm going to show you a tool called Easy Speak. It's developed by Pearl Hulbert, who put it together with some of her fellow students. And it's intended to help people with communication difficulties have a conversation with somebody who is verbal in a way that's a bit quicker and more convenient than having to type in their responses to be then spoken with generative AI speech. So if I were using this tool, or if we were using it, I might ask, are we having fun at the conference today?
Honestly, it's pretty dope. The talks are inspiring, and I'm meeting some cool people.
True enough. But that's not a response I would personally ever give. I don't know about any of you. But the nice thing about this tool is that because of the AI, you can feed it information about the person it's generating responses for. So, you could put in there that, British, don't use those kind of slang words, whatever it may be, so it can personalize the responses. So again, it sounds a bit more like the person it's representing. But there's another piece. That voice doesn't quite ring true.
But now imagine that you're someone with autism who experiences being nonverbal, or someone recently diagnosed with ALS, who knows they may soon lose their ability to speak. Now imagine that you could record and bank your voice, so that when you find yourself unable to speak for yourself, your technology sounds just like you.
And that's a clone of my voice that took me all of about 3 or 4 minutes of waffling at my computer to reproduce. It's definitely not perfect, but how amazing that if I ever should find myself in a position not to be able to do this, that if I were to do it digitally, I could at least have some kind of approximation of sounding like the person I used to sound like. And I think that at a time when you're struggling with not being able to communicate in ways that you're used to must be really quite extraordinary. What about pattern recognition then? So teaming up some of the discriminative AI with some of the generative and the speech recognition. Could that help us communicate across not only different languages, but different types of languages?
This project is a sign language translator. It translates from one sign language to another. It helps the hearing and the deaf communicate.
你喜欢西雅图的天气吗？
You can communicate between American Sign Language and Chinese Sign Language, or potentially any sign languages to any other natural language.
The Connect will capture the sign language and then recognize the meaning of the sign language, including the posture, the trajectory, and then there's an automatic translation into spoken language.
我很喜欢这个。I really like this.
And that, to me, as someone who has got no hope of ever learning sign language, I'd love to, but I've never got myself to do it, is really quite amazing. We just break down another communication barrier between people. But image generation is where we move into firmly the bad of AI and accessibility. On screen is an image that was AI generated in response to a request to put together a picture of someone with a disability. I don't really know where to begin with this image. It's got a person in a wheelchair, except the wheelchair's wheel appears to be a bit, well, broken. They've got a leg, might be a broken leg. It's sort of stuck out at a slightly peculiar angle. They have a bionic hand and a bionic wrist, but the bionic wrist appears to have actual fingers on the other side of it, so I'm not quite sure how that works. There's a bit of a sort of travelator kind of an idea, who knows why, and something that might or might not be the kind of, typical generic disability representation symbol. Image generation of humans is problematic from beginning to end for a whole bunch of reasons. But really, when it comes to disability, what makes it worse is the fact that it's very representative of the bias that we see in AI tooling platforms. Not just bias in terms of ableism or getting people with disabilities wrong. It's coming up with stereotypes, it's racism, ethnic bias, all of those horrible things. And I guess in some respects, much as I hate to admit it, we shouldn't be surprised. These tools have literally been hoovering up everything humanity has had to say on pretty much every subject, including all the horrible opinions that humans tend to hold. And now it's spitting them out pretty faithfully in return. Nobody's training these tools to ignore that information or to remedy it. And that's another big problem that we've got with AI at the moment. These things can be solved. There are researchers out there that have shown this to be true. But again, at the level we need it to happen, it's just not happening. And so we're getting things like images generated that are not representational of people with disabilities. The one that drives me up the wall is when you get a blind person who is invariably somebody who's probably wearing sunglasses, almost always got either a white cane or a guide dog. As someone who's never owned a guide dog, has a black cane instead of a white cane because I'm awkward like that, and only tries to wear sunglasses if they're the Meta Ray-Bans ones or I'm trying to pull off some kind of stylish look. Yeah, I know. But the point is, that doesn't represent me in any way, shape or form, and that's a problem in and of itself too. And then we come on to tooling, and quite specifically, overlays. If you haven't come across the word overlays or the things themselves, they are third-party JavaScripts that are pulled into websites by website and product owners who believe they are getting access to a tool that will fix their accessibility for them just for a few dollars a month. The companies that make these tools apparently think that overlays is a pejorative term. I give up. It's become the accepted term for these since long before they got twitchy about it, and so that's what I'm going to keep calling them. But the reason these are in the bad category starts with the promises that they make. Every single one of the companies that provides one of these tools makes promises they simply can't keep. So, for example, we can look at the Accessiby website, one of the most well-known vendors in this space. Banner headline pretty much across the screen there just says that their tool will give you ADA compliant. ADA, if you're not familiar, is the Americans with Disabilities Act. In compliance terms, what you have to do is conform to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, essentially. But these tools can't do that. I'll give you a really good example. Really common thing that probably most of you will have come across out there on the web is when you have something like a span or a div that's been styled to look like a button. It's got some JavaScript attached to it that will probably at least do the mouse interaction to make it behave like a button, even if it doesn't necessarily do the keyboard. So for a keyboard user, it's probably broken, you can't focus on it. And for a screen reader user, you don't even know it's a button because that role isn't getting reported to you. So common pattern. These tools can't fix that. They can't fix it simply because to fix it, what they have to do is work out which elements on a page have JavaScript event listeners. And the browser won't let you do that. If it was an extension tool, you'd be able to do it. But these things aren't. They're third-party scripts. And there's a very, very good reason why we don't let third-party scripts bugger around with stuff like that under the hood. So there's just one example, and there are countless others. Check out a website by Carl Groves called Overlays Don't Work, and you'll find a heap more examples, including this one. And then we have another one, Userway, another very popular vendor in this space. They're being a little bit more sneaky because the language they use says they support ADA compliance and WCAG conformance. If, like me and many of you here, and indeed all of us now, you know not to trust these statements, supports is a very clever way of kind of not actually coming out and saying we're going to do it, we're just going to contribute to it. But if you are a hairdresser or a dermatology clinic or somebody, that looks an awful lot like you're going to be getting protection, from being sued, under the law. And that's a really weaselly way to kind of advertise what you do, in my opinion. What also makes this lot bad are the tactics that they use. A friend and well-respected person in the accessibility space, Adrian Roselli, over many months, even probably a couple of years, carefully documented and wrote about the problems with a tool called Audio AI. And he researched it and recorded videos and blogged about it. And he pushed back on them on Twitter when they posted things saying that from day one, you get protection under the law. And instead of doing what most decent companies would do and reaching out to someone to find out if there are ways that their product could be improved, they took him to court for defamation. And he's not the only one, but Adrian is an amazingly tough cookie, and he is not one to lie down in the face of being bullied, because at the end of the day, that's exactly what this is. Turned out eventually they dropped the case against him because, as it happens, an opinion, no matter how well researched, evidenced, documented, and shared, is still just an opinion. It is not a statement of fact in the eyes of the law, and so they had no case to make against him, basically. But he's not the only one, and there are other people around the world. Adrian actually wrote on his blog afterwards, he had a contact from, I think it was a PhD student, who was doing a thesis on overlays, and she was terrified that if, she put in any of this kind of negative feedback or anything that might be perceived that way, that, her career might be ended or she would be targeted. And that's the chilling effect of things like this. The good news is that sometimes you get what you pay for. AccessiB is being sued. And they are being sued for basically promising what they can't deliver. A dermatology clinic in New York bought accessiB, put it on its website on the understanding that it would protect them from being sued themselves, until someone came along and sued them because their website wasn't accessible. So they've now filed a class action. This was just a couple of months ago against accessiB. We don't know what the outcome will be, but you can probably guess what we're all hoping for. And now we come on out of the bad and into, I guess, really, the bollocks of the whole things. And the first bit for this is code generation. As Remy kind of mentioned, is this one of the things we should be scared of? A bunch of, coders out there going, yeah, that's fine. AI generated it. We'll all be okay. So I checked 3 different tools a few months ago now and wrote a blog post about it. And this is a short video. It's a synopsis of the blog post, created with help from AI, because, another accessibility feature, not everybody likes or can read long stuff, especially about technical topics. So sometimes a quick synopsis video is a lot easier for people to access. But here's the gist of it.
Generative AI can help rapidly create prototypes, jog your memory, or produce code using unfamiliar concepts. But caution is needed, especially when it comes to creating accessible code. We asked Gemini, formerly known as Bard, ChatGPT, and Fix My Code if a code snippet met the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.2 Level AA. Gemini's response was detailed but didn't provide a definitive answer. ChatGPT's response correctly identified some issues but missed the main point. It focused on improving the label and link text. Fix My Code's response was confident but incorrect. It missed the fact that the code snippet failed a success criterion. We also told them to create code for accessible tabs. Gemini's code included ARIA attributes but lacked proper keyboard support. ChatGPT's code lacked ARIA roles, making it inaccessible for screen readers. Fix My Code used ARIA correctly but also lacked keyboard support. In conclusion, generative AI can help write accessible code if used wisely. Always verify AI-generated code with trusted sources.
And that's really what it comes down to. Like so many of the tools that are out there, not just AI ones, but in general, used well and used wisely, they're actually quite helpful. And, we're all working to deadlines, to pressure, and to help you get things accessible. These can help. They're particularly useful if you need your memory jogged about, what was that accessibility attribute, that ARIA thingy. For jogging your mind and doing that, they're really useful. They can be useful for starting from scratch, but that's really where the verification is absolutely essential. Just either test what you've produced, make sure it works, make sure it's keyboard accessible, works with a screen reader, magnification, all of those things, or go and verify it somewhere else out on the web from a trusted source that might be able to help. One thing that's worth mentioning about that, the third of those tools, Fix My Code, was actually a product of Userway, the overlay vendor. They claimed, and this is the real irony, that it was exclusively trained on accessibility data. Turns out, didn't either help or make any difference, and fortunately they've since figured that part out and closed it down. But use them, sure, but verify what you're doing is really the important message. And then we come on, of course, to hallucinations. My favorite of it's just a bit bollocks really, isn't it? Here's a picture of a shelf in my home office. You'll be getting the idea by now that I've got a lot of junk in my office. Here's what I think it was, ChatGPT had to say about this image.
The picture shows a wooden shelf attached to a wall. On the shelf, there are 3 items from left to right: an old-fashioned rotary telephone, a metal slinky, and a Rubik's Cube. The telephone is beige with a black rotary dial and a coiled cord. The metal slinky is in its classic coiled position. The Rubik's Cube is colorful with different colors on each side, including green, yellow, and red. The wall behind the shelf is painted in a light color, and the shelf is illuminated by a light source from above.
Yep, okay, but telephone's not beige, is it?
Yes, I apologize for any confusion. The telephone is indeed beige in color with a black rotary dial and a coiled cord connecting the handset to the base.
Okay, and what about the bloody great big pencil?
I apologize, but there is no pencil visible in the picture you provided. The picture shows a rotary telephone, a metal slinky, and a Rubik's Cube on a wooden shelf.
So yes, hallucinations are a problem. And again, really, it's the same as it is with the code generation. I'm not going to stop using these for image description. I'm sorry, it's just too valuable and it gives me too much. But I am smart enough to know that I should not be making any kind of big decisions on what I'm being told. And I certainly shouldn't make any decisions, that might jeopardize my safety, especially when it comes to the real-time world descriptions or, the wearables and things like that. So I think a lot of it comes down to use these tools. As I said at the beginning, it's getting increasingly harder not to use these tools directly or indirectly, but knowing that you can't trust what they say and knowing how and where and when to verify is probably the most important thing of all, and especially around accessibility, because of course, when we build websites, whatever they might be, apps, it doesn't really matter. People need to be able to use them. They need to be able to get the job done. And if we're taking shortcuts without verifying what we're being told, then that's on us, really, at the end of the day. And on that note, thank you very much.